For Tuesday, the 16th of January. I'm Stephen Ridgway. There are vulnerabilities, a couple of vulnerabilities in a Bosch thermostat, Bosch BCC 100 and related versions thermostat. Why does this matter? Well, Internet of Things type stuff. These thermostats are not surprisingly common. They are a common thermostat, relatively intelligent. Costs a couple of £100 on Amazon, sort of thing that you might well find in your house. It has a vulnerability which is being tracked as CVE 2023-49722 with a CVSS score of 8.3. And it can be exploited by an attacker on the same network to replace the firmware with a rogue version. So basically, the wireless component, because obviously it's you want your thermostat on your local network, because getting up to change the temperature is it's just so last century. So the wireless component holds open port 8899 on BCC 101, BCC 102, and BCC 50 thermostat products. It is an unauthenticated connection to the device. So the thermostat is effectively made up of two chips, and the one that is listening will mirror any message that it receives on that port directly to the main microcontroller through the UART data bus. So it is then, from the microcontroller's perspective, impossible to distinguish a legitimate request from an illegitimate request, because it isn't aware that the request originated on the network. So if you are using any of these devices in your home, it is worth looking to get to firmware version 4.13.33, which closes port 8899. I'm kind of guessing that it was left open as part of the development process and testing process for the device and just never got shut down again afterwards. As with all things, it sounds a bit like, so a rogue person in your house could then adjust your heating. But more seriously, if you can get rogue firmware onto a device, it then has visibility of your wireless network. For example, it will be able to snoop on things. It will be able to do all sorts of things that you wouldn't really expect or want it to do. So it goes beyond just turning the heating down. Juniper devices, more than 11,000 Juniper devices are exposing are vulnerable to a remote code execution vulnerability. There is a strong recommendation to get the patches rolled out ASAP. Vulnerabilities being tracked as CVE 2024-21591, and it impacts the software's JWeb configuration interface. It has a CVSS score of 9.8, so this is pretty serious. And it's, which actually is the same as there was a vulnerability discovered in August last year. which has got a similar severity score. And according to Threat Insights, most vast majority of admins didn't bother patching it, which is, I think, in my opinion, not a particularly smart thing to have done. There are various devices. So the vulnerability depends on the Junos OS versions. There are vulnerable versions listed in the article in the register, but basically there are vulnerabilities in versions 20, 21, and 22 in their various releases. I'm not going to claim to know how up to date or out of date those things are. I haven't. It's been a very long time since I've used Juniper Kit in anger. So, if you are unable to apply the patches, which, given the nature of the enterprise nature of Juniper Kit, that may well be the case. It is suggested to disable the JWeb interface, or to limit access to only trusted hosts. So there are a couple of good workarounds. Both of those, I think, would be fairly sustainable workarounds, especially limiting access to specific hosts. If you actually need the JWeb component. So if you're using Juniper devices, recommend you have a look at this. Make sure that either you have patched or you have addressed, mitigated this particular vulnerability, because it is fairly serious. Also, talking about networking devices, there's an article in Security Affairs that references some research done by Bishop Fox, another cyber business. They found nearly 180,000 SonicWall next-gen firewalls that are publicly exploitable. So my understanding is that patches have been out for a while. However, these vulnerabilities are still, if you know what they are and you scan for them, they are still out there on the majority. 76% of devices, of SonicWall devices, found SonicWall next-gen firewall devices found on the internet appear still to be vulnerable, which is fairly scary. Interestingly, the researchers have developed a test script which is available on GitHub to determine whether your device is vulnerable without crashing it. So there are three vulnerabilities: CVE 2022 22274, 2023 0656. Oh no, sorry, 0656. So CVE 2023 0656 is the other one. They will result in unauthenticated denial of service. So could be worse. Fairly restrictive if you happen to be using the device. There is a proof of concept test script. No, if as that's available on GitHub, it does mean that not only will will security researchers be using this stuff, or you could use it on your own stuff to find out if you're vulnerable. It will be used by people who have nefarious intent. So if you are using SonicWall next-gen firewalls, specifically Series 6 and 7, have a look, make sure that you are patching them, patch them before they are hit with denial of service attacks. Article in Bleeping Computer regarding the recently discovered Ivanti Connect Secure 0-day vulnerabilities. The two vulnerabilities that were recently discovered are actively under attack at the moment. As they put it in Bleeping Computer, they are under mass exploitation. So just as a reminder, we're talking about CVE 2023 46805, which is an authentication bypass vulnerability, and CVE 2024 21887 command injection vulnerabilities. Widespread attacks started on January the 11th. So if you are using Ivanti, specifically Ivanti Connect Secure VPN, and Policy Secure Network Access Control appliances, and seriously have a look at getting them patched. If you want to delve a little deeper, you can use Ivanti's Integrity Checker tool. If that comes back with any signs of a breach, consider your devices compromised at this point. So there are mitigation measures that Ivanti have come up with. I think there are patches available, but I'm not completely sure. But definitely have a read of this article. It talks about some of the tools used in the attacks, things like zipline, passive backdoor, blah blah blah, web shells, you name it. There's various things that are being thrown around, and you can see there's also a very nice map that is demonstrating where these devices are. So VPN appliances exposed online. So a lot in the United States, China, Japan, Australia, Canada, UK, Europe. So there are a good number of these devices out there. If you're using them, please do take this seriously. We are kind of at the point where if you've got them and you haven't patched them, you may need to assume compromise. So the cosmetics firm, retailer, Lush apparently has been hit by a cyber attack. Not really clear what kind of attack it is, but very little has been released. However, they've released a statement saying that they're currently responding to a cybersecurity incident. So wait for a little more information. Uncertain whether this is, ransomware, DDoS, data breach, whatever. My bet would be on it's a form of ransomware. So if you are a customer, I think, of Lush and you've got an account, might be worth just checking for unexpected use of that account. And if you use the same credentials for multiple sites, you shouldn't, and B, consider changing both your Lush logons and your and any other logons that you use with the same credentials, as in the same usernames and passwords. And of course, if you can apply 2FA, as always, apply 2FA. So there will be more information about this, I'm sure, coming out, but it's just a quick heads up that I came across this morning. And then finally, as a reminder, I'm sure nobody has forgotten, but the world's pretty dangerous place at the moment. Two wars going on simultaneously. Well, Anonymous Sudan, which is a Russia-affiliated hacktivist group that are known to target anti-Russia and anti-Islamist sites, groups, or people they think are supporting either of those causes. They have recently launched, in fact, on the 12th, so a few days ago, they launched an attack on the London Internet Exchange. So the London Internet Exchange is one of those. It's one of the major peering points for telcos. And just in case anybody listening hasn't really thought about this in any depth, different telcos actually own. In the end, all this stuff on the cloud is it's traveling over fiber networks and copper nets, all sorts of things. But there are physical components to all of these things. So different telcos own different physical sets of cabling. The biggest, of course, in the UK would be BT. Colt has got or did have an extensive network around, City of London. Cable and Wireless bought out by Vodafone, so Vodafone owns, has got its own long haul stuff around the UK, and so on and so forth all around the world. Well, if you are browsing something on the internet, it would be extremely limiting if you could only get to devices which were on your own telco's backbone. So these backbones peer. There are only a handful of places around the world where they do peer. Certainly peer with on a major scale. And the London Internet Exchange is in that top tier of peering points. So it's basically where, if your traffic needs to get off BT and onto Vodafone, it's probably going via one of these, or as an example. So from the point of view of causing disruption, if you knock out Internet Exchange points, Internet peering points, it is very, very disruptive. At the best, if you knocked one of these peering points out, your traffic would then have to be routed via some other part of the world, which will cause congestion and delay, increased latency, and so on and so forth. If you could knock out a handful of these, it is theoretically possible that you could isolate chunks of the internet back down to their own telcos again, which is concerning for all sorts of reasons, from communications, commerce, defense, lots of reasons why this is a bad thing. So it is worth being aware that these groups are targeting countries that have been vocal in support over either supporting Israel or supporting Ukraine, or in this case, the UK and US have been involved in attacks against terrorist groups in Yemen that have been firing missiles at ships in the Red Sea, I think. So this is in retaliation to the attacks over Yemen. So bear in mind, if your organisation is associated with any of this, any activities, you may be directly in the firing line for these sorts of groups. But if you are simply working out of a country such as the UK or US, which has been either involved in or supporting one or other side of these conflicts, it is definitely worth considering the current state of readiness within your own environments to defend against attacks, because these attacks will be, until this stuff is sorted out, these attacks will remain common. They are sophisticated. They are well funded, allegedly by Iranians. Although we would never really know. So yeah, just be aware. So I brought this one to your attention because it is a reminder that there are some quite sophisticated attacks being thrown around at the moment, and that warfare is not restricted these days to bombs, guns, boats, soldiers, and goodness knows what. There is an awful lot of this stuff that is going on in cyberspace, and it could well be very disruptive to the West. I haven't got anything else for today. I think that's quite enough. It's overrun slightly, but there we go. I will speak to you all again tomorrow.